excited that we have a guest with us today. 2017, I don't know how long Neil had been living in town, but he had been in town a year or two, and I had told him we need to go to the King Center, and we need to go to Ebenezer on MLK Day. We need to go to Ebenezer on MLK Day. I know people, we have no problem getting in, we need to go. So we decided we were going to go, 2017. We got up early, put our suits on, went down to the Ebenezer, stood in the longest line you could ever imagine, and then we were met with, sorry, there's no more room. It's like, I was so embarrassed because I'd been telling Neil that I'm connected, we can get in, no problem. I wasn't really connected at all, and we couldn't get in. So I said, well, what do you think about just going back to the house, and we'll just watch all day, the service, we'll just watch it on television. So that's what we did. I don't know if you remember 2017, there had just been a change in administrations from 8 years of the Obama administration, and we were entering a new world. And so on the platform that day, there were people like Bernie Sanders who spoke, and just some incredible speakers, but nobody compared to this 15-year-old boy that stood up to speak and just killed it. I mean, Neil and I look at each other, and it's like if he wants to be president, he will be president of the United States. He is that captivating. He is that great. And so we were blown away. And Neil, I think, even put a video together, and I think shared it with his mom, and they were able to put it out. It was a wonderful video. Many of you have seen it this week.
Martin dreamed when it was time to dream. Rosa sat when it was time to sit. Barack ran when it was time to run. Now is the time to rise up together as one.
But Royce Mann was just 15 years old. And I remember later, we were at Pride. Remember the year we were all big presents at Pride, and I think Royce and his mom came by, and I think that was maybe the first time you got to really spend time with him, and that was great. So Neil told me, Neil said, I don't know if you knew this, but Royce is running for school board in Atlanta and will be the youngest school board person on the school board if elected. And Neil and I talked, and it's like, we want to be connected with this young man. This young man, if he chooses to be president, he will be president one day. But right now, he's just going to be on school board. But I wanted all y'all to meet him, and we are excited. He's going to share with us a little bit about what's going on, a little bit about, where's Gene? His grandmother or great-grandmother had something in common with you. Maybe he will mention it, but would you give it up to our new friend, Royce Mann? Royce, thank you for being here. Thank you. It's an honor.
Thank you, Village. It is an honor to be here this morning. My name is Royce Mann. I am a lifelong Atlantan, a proud graduate of Atlanta Public Schools, a recent Emory alum, and a longtime community organizer. And I'm running for the Atlanta Board of Education, seat 8 citywide, so if you live anywhere in the city of Atlanta, I will be on your ballot. Because right now, public education is under attack. And we need a really strong first line of defense for our public schools and for the civil rights of our students and for the ability of our educators to teach the truth. And for me, this fight is deeply personal. My grandmother is my guiding inspiration. She passed away a few years ago. Her name was Connie Stewart. She worked with President Carter from the time that he was a state senator on education issues. Followed him to the governor's mansion and to the White House, and her proudest achievement was being part of the effort to create the U.S. Department of Education. And as I think we're all aware, that effort is being undone as we speak. And what guided that effort was not a commitment to streamlining bureaucracy, though that was one of the outcomes. What guided it was a commitment to education being the great equalizer that could provide economic mobility to students regardless of outcome, and that it was the federal government's responsibility to ensure that students' civil rights are protected. That's why Trump is coming after the Department of Education, especially the Office of Civil Rights, which is a lifeline for students with disabilities, for LGBTQIA plus students, for undocumented students, for students of color. These are the students who need us to stand 10 toes down for them. And they need board members at the local level who will fight, whether that's on the board dais, whether that's in the streets, whether that's at the state capitol, whether that's traveling to D.C. and demanding better for our students and educators. I'm also running for the Board of Education because I believe that on a Board of Education, we should have at the very least 3 distinct viewpoints. We should have the perspective of educators. We should have the perspective of parents and caregivers. We should also have the perspective of students, or at the very least, those who have been in our schools as students recently. Right now, we have a 9-member Board of Education in Atlanta, and not a single person on there was a student in our schools in the last 2 decades, and I believe that that creates a disconnect. A disconnect that stops us from addressing the issues the students are facing today. That's why I'm focused on getting more mental health support for our students and more guidance. We only have 1 counselor for every 500 students in Atlanta public schools, and that's about the same across the state. But I believe we should be leading the way. With a $30 million investment out of our $2 billion budget, we could double our counseling capacity and provide the support our students need. I believe in today's world, we need to be preparing every student not just for college or the workforce, but for both. That means increasing participation in job training programs and apprenticeship programs, and expanding diverse career pathways, including in the arts. My dad is an arts educator. He's another one of my inspirations. He works in arts integration primarily, so ensuring that creativity is integrated across content areas. And we need to invest in early education. We already see vast disparities across lines of income, across lines of race, even at elementary school levels. If we don't provide universal literacy-based pre-K for every 3 and 4-year-old in Atlanta and beyond, then we're not going to be able to address those gaps. And last, as I said, we need to stand up to the attacks that we are seeing. I've been fighting to empower young people for the last 8 years. I got my start leading the March for Our Lives movement as a community organizer. This was a little bit after I had done that poem, and I was going to end with that poem and share that with y'all. But I really got started as an organizer leading the March for Our Lives movement, fighting for common sense gun legislation, safer schools, and mental health support. And what I learned through that movement is that when young people show up, those in power have to listen, because we remind them of the empathy that they once had. And that is the power that I'm working to help every young person find. That's the power that I was able to find when I was invited to speak at the King Center, or at Ebenezer, at King Day commemorative service hosted by the King Center. So I'll close with the poem that I shared that day. It's been a few years, so I gotta pull it up in my notes. And I've changed it a bit because I think it's a piece that remains very relevant, but as things have happened, I've added some lines. Let's rise up. Let's rise up with those overlooked and undervalued by society. The black man who walks down the street on the way to his job, it's his first day as an 8th grade English teacher. The same man who has a son, his pride and joy, who tells that son that life can be hard, but anything is possible. The black man who walks down the street on the way to his job only to pass a white woman clutching her purse a little too tightly. Let's rise up with the boy labeled girl at birth. The boy who always wore dresses that never felt right. You see, no matter the size, they always seemed too tight. The boy with the parents who claimed to love their daughter only to disown their son. Let's rise up with the Muslim woman who works for the Justice Department only to experience injustice every time she wears a hijab. Let's rise up and lend a hand to the boy who can't. The boy who sits in a wheelchair watching the other kids play basketball. The boy who becomes the only one in his class to win an Olympic gold medal. Let's rise up with the woman who was born in the U.S., whose parents are Dominican, and whose son is an All-American linebacker. So why is she repeatedly told to go back to Mexico? Let's even rise up with the poor white boy. The one who is told he is privileged but doesn't feel that way. And yes, this boy does exist. The boy who talks about the pool his family doesn't have and wears the shoes his mother can't afford. He was given everything, right? So it must be his fault, right? Wrong, because as one YouTube commenter wrote, life can be hard if you're white, but life will never be hard because you are white. Let's rise up with the girl who crossed the border in her mother's arms when she was 3. In search of the American dream, a nightmare is what it's often seemed to be. Nevertheless, she persisted and earned a college degree. Let's rise up with a young Native American poet. She speaks truth, but no one listens. The poet who should be up here right now, the poet who instead has to hear a white boy speak of her struggle and triumph. Let's rise up. Because once we do, that glass ceiling will be in reach, and trust me, it is breakable. Once we do, we will be able to see over any wall, no matter who pays for it. Let's rise up, because wait is never a valid response to injustice, because inequality thrives at the sight of a head turned away, because ahead is the only way we can afford to go, because bystanders are never innocent in the face of oppression. Let's rise up. Let's rise up out of the comfort of our own homes. From behind our screens of privilege, because 140 characters cannot defeat hatred. Let's rise up to our elected officials, into the streets where change has for centuries been born. Let's rise up. Because if we don't, who will? If we don't, who will? Because if we don't, no one will. We must have the will to fight. Martin dreamt and he woke up the world. Rosa and Claudette sat when it meant taking a stand. John Lewis ran to continue the fight. Now is the time to rise up together as one against fascism, for our immigrant neighbors, for our LGBTQIA plus siblings, for our democracy, for public education. Thank you.
I'd vote for him for anything. Anything.